It's time for my first SPOOPRISE art challenge, and I am super excited to play. If you missed my launch video, this is a dice rolling art challenge. To play, just grab a 6-sided die and a 20-sided die, or pull up a dice rolling app on your computer or phone. Roll a 6-sided die to determine which Halloween character you will draw, then roll a 20-sided die to determine the theme of the drawing. Take the challenge daily, use it weekly, use it once, whatever works for you. This is an open-ended challenge, so just have fun with the provided prompts. Tag your finished pieces with the hashtag SPOOPRISEChallenge and tag me, Ali Mackey, on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram because I would love to see what you come up with. More details are available in the description below. Okay, it's time to roll my very first challenge. Let's see what we got here. Okay, I got a 6 for character and a natural 20 for theme. That means ghost and hobby. Okay, this is gonna be fun. So the first thing I did was pull up this square template I have on hand to sketch out a couple of thumbnails. Thumbnails are super quick sketches that give you a feel for the overall composition and layout of an illustration before you begin. They're usually super messy and just meant to give you a really basic idea that then you can turn into a proper illustration. I decided pretty much immediately that I wanted this drawing to be of a ghost that was knitting. So I sketched 2 different thumbnails. The first one is a ghost knitting a little shawl out of a gigantic cobweb, and the second one is a ghost sitting in a tree knitting little ethereal cozies for the tree branches, inspired by the urban knitting movement in many cities. I decided to run with the second idea because I thought the idea and the composition of the illustration were a little more unique and challenging than my first idea. So from there, I started my sketch. As I sketched this, I had a Pinterest board up on one of my other monitors that I loaded up with illustrations of all the different characters I could possibly roll for this challenge, including a lot of ghostly illustrations. But oddly enough, I think one of my strongest inspirations that wound up coming out in this piece was Emily from Anya's Ghost by Vera Brosgol, even though I wasn't really looking at any art from the comic at the time. I was playing a lot with the lines and the flow in this piece, trying to find unique ways to move the eye around the illustration. I knew I wanted the eye drawn mostly to the center of the work, where the ghost girl was seated. I think I mostly pulled it off. Looking at it with fresh eyes today, I might have done a few things differently, but it's fine. That's the fun of learning. I like a lot of the different things I did with this piece to try and draw the eye, and it's also good to see places where I can improve in the future. I tried something a little bit different with my inking technique for this piece. Most of the piece is inked in my standard style, but the tree itself is just 2 layers of solid color, one for the foreground branches and trunk, and one for the background branches. I found that added kind of a paper cut style depth to the piece that I really wound up liking. Something that was really important for me in this piece was to illustrate the knitting as correctly as possible. Too often, knitting is drawn in really strange ways because a lot of people don't know exactly what knitting looks like. For the record, no one really knits with needles sticking upwards in the way that you see in a lot of cartoons and illustrations. Theoretically you can, but it's really, really hard and no one's really done it that way for a very, very long time. Knitting is typically done with 1 needle in each hand, facing downward. One hand holds the yarn that you're knitting with, which is called the working yarn, and the other hand is holding the knitting itself. It's pretty widely known in the knitting community that knitting with the working yarn in your left hand is faster and more efficient. It doesn't matter which hand is your dominant hand. But I happen to knit with my right hand, that's how I was taught, and that's just how I do it, so I drew the ghost doing the same. I decided that I wanted the ghost to have this kind of swirly, ghostly cloud above her head, acting sort of like hair, but not quite. I always find drawing these types of bubbly, flowy shapes very therapeutic. It's really enjoyable to me. I drew them in this deep blue color, but I think they'll wind up being this glowy, ethereal white when I do the final color palette. We'll see what happens. My drawings always look a bit weird at this stage, as I fill in shapes and forms with all sorts of random colors. There's way more efficient ways to do this. I've said it on this channel before. I admit to being a bit set in my ways though. I have been getting better at approaching it in a different way, but this is just how I fill things in, so bear with me. I'm also just starting to brainstorm the actual colors for the illustration at this stage. I recently did a spooky piece for a client in which I employed a lot of greens and purples, and I really liked the spooky ethereal look of it, so I think I'm going to run with a similar color palette for this, except maybe a bit brighter. I wonder what her yarn's made out of. Silk? Wool? Threads of wandering souls? What do you think? Once I decided on a palette, the color for this piece came together really quickly. Sometimes the palette just clicks right away and I'm really happy with it right out of the gate, and this was one of those times, so I just ran with it and this part actually went by really quickly. The very last thing I did was do a few final tweaks in Adobe Photoshop to add some texture and do a little bit of color correction so the colors were exactly how I wanted them. And that's it, I'm done. I am really happy with this. It was a really fun exercise in composition, making the eye go where you want it to in a piece, and also a really fun way to challenge myself with a spooky limited color palette. If all the challenges are as fun as this one, then honestly I can't wait for week 2, this is great. If you want to play along with me, just grab a couple of dice, roll for character and theme, draw a fun and spoopy Halloween drawing, and share it. Tag me and use the hashtag SPOOPRISE because I would love to see what you come up with. If people take part, I'll probably share some on the channel as we move through the month. More details are available in the description below. I hope you'll play along, and as always, I invite you to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and I'll see you next week for my second SPOOPRISE Art Challenge roll. Thanks for watching, and have a spoopy day.